New England, in my opinion, arguably the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. They've got two rookies that are going to be asked to carry a very big load, Matt, in Jalen Polk, and my favorite sleeper wide receiver in Javon Baker. This guy has those attributes that I saw when I saw Amon-Ra St. Brown play at USC.
They're going to have one of these rookies way out kick expectations.
Look at the release.
There's your separation.
Great route.
Stutter and go. Gets by clean.
That is unbelievable.
Maybe the greatest catch I've ever seen.
In New England, we go from the penthouse to the outhouse here. New England, in my opinion, arguably the worst wide receiver room in the NFL. Kendrick Bourne's health is an unknown right now. They're saying he's healthy, but who knows? And even when healthy, Kendrick Bourne is he a top 25 receiver in this league? I don't know. They've got two rookies that are going to be asked to carry a very big load, Matt, in Jalen Polk, and my favorite sleeper wide receiver in Javon Baker. But just other than Baker, Matt, it is a complete dearth of X receivers in New England, and I just don't know how you get around that in the modern NFL.
Ooh, yeah, I it's interesting. I think they're going to have one of the they're going to have one of these rookies way out kick expectations. And I think Polk is probably the guy that they're going to be betting on to do it. Obviously, he was the earliest drafted player between him and Javon Baker, so he should be considered the favorite. But yeah, I mean, even like Kendrick Bourne is your X receiver. He can do it because he can beat man coverage. I charted a few of his games from last season while he was playing, like kind of in the middle of the year. And I think from a man coverage perspective, he was actually having a pretty decent year. Of course, he's coming off an ACL, right? They even talked like in mini camp about, I think Gerard Mayo said, hey, it's really good opportunity for these young guys to be out here and kind of without a guy like Kendrick Bourne around, which to me makes it seem like they think Kendrick Bourne is just an established week one starter, probably their quote best receiver right now. And like, we'll see about that. I think Bourne is a good player, but again, he's coming off an injury. He's getting a little older. And I don't know that we definitely can't sit here and say like we've ever seen a great season. We've seen a nice season from Kendrick Bourne, I think in 21, right? His first year with the Patriots. Now, when you go like down the depth chart a little bit, I do like Pop Douglas as kind of like, we broke him down last week. I said he kind of has like a weird profile, kind of like a hard to decipher sort of player because he's a man coverage beating slot receiver. You typically don't see a lot of those guys, right? Typically your slot receiver is going to be more of your zone beater. Yep. But hey, it's still, again, it's nice to see a year one player show up with like a 69% success rate versus man coverage. That's still like a good overall indicator. And just like, wow, that was a nice successful season for a freaking 6th round pick out of Liberty. All right, so I think that's a nice showing for him. I think he can play.
Right.
To me, Polk is the big wild card here. Can Polk establish himself as a day one starter in 2 receiver sets as that flanker? I think he can. I really liked Jalen Polk's profile. When you go back and look at it, there's some really good indicators there. He was right there with his teammate Rome Odunze in terms of the best contested catch receiver in this class. Really good hands. Didn't drop. I don't think he dropped any passes in the games that I charted for him. 81st percentile success rate versus zone coverage, 83.5%. Again, that was top 3 in the class among the receivers that I sampled. Now, he definitely has some weaknesses. He's not an elite press man beater, but still 68.1% against man, 69.2 against press. Those are solid numbers. You look at the routes that he's really successful on, definitely not going to be a big time vertical threat, I think, right? Subpar against coverage against nines, on 9 routes, corner routes, out routes. That's not the strength of his game. But you look at like dig route success rate, post route success rate, curl route success rate, all above the prospect average. That's where I think he is a really interesting player, especially if we're thinking about this offense trying to utilize the middle of the field, which I think it's hard to know what Alex Van Pelt is going to do because we've never seen him be an offensive coordinator, play calling offensive coordinator before. But I still think that if you just look at where he's been, what the type of stuff that they'll probably implement here, especially if they're taking anything from like the Joe Flacco run with the Cleveland Browns, which I think like, hey, it's weird to say, but Drake May as kind of an athletic dude with a cannon, eventually just kind of running the old man Joe Flacco Cleveland Browns offense. I actually think there's some symmetry there. And
Okay.
they did make a lot of money, again, shooting deep passes over the middle of the field. And that's where I think Jalen Polk lines up really well. So I'm actually pretty high on Polk, both as a rookie and just kind of along the line. Like, is he maybe a future superstar receiver? I don't know about that, but I think he could be a really good and useful player in the NFL for a long time.
This is why I look at Javon Baker, and this is why I've pegged him as one of my favorite sleepers, mostly from a utilization standpoint, right? You talk about Jalen Polk, maybe it wasn't the best downfield, and I think I agree with you. I think he profiles really well as a flanker guy. As a matter of fact, I look at this roster. There's just a lot of guys that are either just project wide receivers or flanker slots. You know, Pop Douglas, KJ Osborne, Juju Smith-Schuster. I don't know if he'll be on the roster, but whatever, he might be. Jalen Reagor, for some reason, is on the Patriots right now. I mean, and again, even when you could talk about Kansas City, you know, they've got Travis Kelce. Hunter Henry, who is going to be an integral part of this offense, is 30 years old, you know, at a position that, you know, you don't want to be running your offense through a 30-year-old Hunter Henry. Okay. So, I see a lot of flanker slot types, and I don't see a lot of X receivers except for my guy, Javon Baker, who is an absolute dog. This guy has those attributes, that I saw when I saw Amon-Ra St. Brown play at USC, right? This guy's just going to fight for the football in the air. He's going to, I mean, he will just tear your jersey off trying to fight for that football. That's what I really like about Javon Baker. And then you look at his reception perception profile, Matt. And again, there's just so much to like, right? Exceptional ability deep downfield, 61.5% success rate on the 9 route, which is awesome. 87.8% on the curl route. Again, awesome. 81% on the slant. So not only is he beating you deep, he's got some, you know, middle of the field ability as well, which is what we look for. And again, anytime we're talking about reception perception, I'm always looking for that 70-80 breakdown, right? 70% success rate versus man, 80% success rate versus zone. I get it. Big 12 football. Listen, I understand. But these are the benchmarks, and he met those benchmarks, okay? So for me, I just think Baker's got a real opportunity. You talk about a player that can outkick their draft stock. This guy was taken in the 4th round. He's got an absolute chance. And just with, again, the dearth of X receivers there in New England, Matt, I just think he's got a real opportunity to step in day one and establish himself as the starting X receiver for New England.
I'm with you. We talked about Buffalo at the start of the show, and I think I'm generally higher on what the Bills have at wide receiver and like the potential of this room, maybe more than you are. But like, I wish that the Bills had a Javon Baker kind of waiting in the wings.
Oh
right?
my God. Yes.
You know, because a lot of the same things that we said, and look, I like a lot of the players that are on the Bills maybe as much or probably more than I do the Patriots options. But like, if the Bills had a Javon Baker kind of waiting in the wings, is like, maybe, okay, we kick around the MVS stuff at the beginning of the season, but let's get this rookie up to speed. And like, man, I think that makes that room look so much more interesting.
Hell yeah.
Than the Patriots, or than it does right now. But with the Patriots, like, I've said this a lot coming out of the draft. I had, if you look at my stacked prospect rankings on reception perception on the website, it accounts since the 21 draft class up to 24. Yeah. I had Baker and Jalen Polk graded in the same tier. So they got, and they both were graded in the area that Jalen Polk went. So look, I know that, like you said, Baker's not a perfect prospect profile. You mentioned that he played the Big 12. He also kind of, at least in the season that I sampled, only played on one side of the field. He ran a freaking 9 route on 35.6% of his routes. So there's going to need to be some development for Javon Baker at the NFL level. That's sort of, I wonder if he is like the early season understudy to Kendrick Bourne as the X receiver. If that's kind of their plan, is to get Baker developed up to speed, and maybe by the end of his rookie season, then we're starting to talk about like a full-time guy. This is really like it's a great call to say that he's a sleeper, because he stands out in this receiver room. It's sort of one of these things does not look like the other. And like I said, there's some developmental aspect to his game, but he lined up as an X receiver in college. Mentioned he took 78.2% of his sample snaps outside. He was on the line for 87.7%. He was an X receiver prospect. He stands out in this group. He showed you an ability to high point the football. He showed you an ability to separate, as you outlined some of the success rates there. bottom line is 88th percentile success rate versus press for Javon Baker. Like, yeah, the competition, Big 12, whatever, UCF, the offense, that's still an impressive note. That is still a guy that I think should have been taken ahead of the 4th round. They get him in the 4th round. It's an excellent complimentary pick to Jalen Polk. So, yes, this is ifs and all that stuff. When we're doing these division previews, we're going to be throwing a lot of ifs and like, hey, maybe this could happen type of stuff around. Yeah, obviously the implication when you say that is that, sure, maybe both of these guys just can't play. Maybe Javon Baker like doesn't develop. And yes, the receiver room is a disaster. But on the positive standpoint, if Baker can just turn into like a viable NFL player, that gives him an answer to X receiver. If Jalen Polk can be the player that I think he can be as like a volume hog, I do think you can utilize him in similar ways to the Rams utilized Puka Nacua last year. I'm not saying he's about to have a Puka Nacua rookie season, but just use him in some of those same ways. Get him involved in the dirty work. Get him involved in these middle of the field routes. That's where basically Puka made all of his big plays as a rookie last year. And then, yeah, these other guys like Demario Douglas, I think, can be a good role player. Kendrick Bourne can be a good role player. Like, then you have something if you're the Patriots. And I think that's at least, like, there's a potential for hope in this wide receiver room.